2, 1.
We'd like to welcome you to another edition of Grok Talk, brought to you by New Hampshire's leading conservative blog site, GraniteGrok.com. We are your feared extremist, right-wing, hard-charging, gun-toting, opinionated, outspoken, rabble-rousing, letter-writing, radio microphone-stomping conservatives and rational libertarians. So get ready for more news and opinion you could only get from GraniteGrok.com.
Grok Talk.
All right, it's time to play talk radio. Let's go. Okay.
We haven't stopped.
We
So-
haven't.
so
No.
let's-
Anyway,
so-
so I was going to start another topic, but apparently you're not going to let me. Go ahead.
No. Let's just quickly revisit the tipping point and the suspension of disbelief, because I think this is crucial. What's driving the rift in the Republican Party? What's driving even the rift in the Democrat Party? Is that people believe the country's reached a tipping point, that the government has gone so far beyond serving them that, the government, in conjunction with whatever you call it, Wall Street, whatever interests, is in fact ripping off the country in conjunction with maybe the central banks. And we don't believe the Republican Party is the bulwark against, societal collapse and protection of the Constitution that it is supposed to be. So now the question is, what do we do? Well, the Democrats thinks as they do. It's the greedy rich. They're going for Bernie. But the Republicans, this is where I think it gets really dangerous. It's where we nearly had a President Buchanan 20 or 30 years ago. He ran a populist campaign, but you know what? I'll take Buchanan any day compared to what's going on now. You've got a atrophied national party that doesn't stand for anything, and therefore will fall for anything, and you've got a couple of decent conservatives. Even Rubio, except for a couple of flaws, is a lot better than the rest of them. You've got Cruz, who's a shining beacon, and you've got Trump. Trump is a populist, and he said, "I, with my force of personality, can fix this." And people are willing to believe or to suspend disbelief because they believe we've reached a tipping point.
You are right, and there is such a difference. You are right when you said suspend disbelief. It's not that they necessarily believe. They suspend their own disbelief in order to do it.
Yeah, they have their doubts. Maybe they're willing to overlook the doubts in order for the image on the screen to remain intact, and they believe that Trump can do it. And I gotta tell you, it's the most dangerous thing in the world. When you look at what happened, examples everywhere: Hugo Chavez, Juan Perón, the Kirchners, Mussolini, Franco. And of course Hitler. People will throw rocks and eggs at me for saying that.
You breaker of Godwin's law.
No,
it's true.
But
the point is, what were the Germans thinking in the 1920s and 1930s? Oh, goody, let's go and take over the world? No, that's not what they were thinking. Their greatness, which they had throughout a good chunk of the 19th century and the early 20th century, as the provinces had got together and the nation had become prosperous, had been smashed down. They were impoverished. They were embarrassed before the world. They were being forced to pay reparations. They were in terrible shape, and their currency imploded as well.
Right.
And so,
what does that sound like?
Yeah,
History does repeat itself.
If the wrong guy came along and says, "I know how to fix this," and he convinced enough of them,
let's make Germany great again.
Well, that was exactly the National Socialism mantra.
Absolutely.
That's right. And as I say, that's why I got stuff thrown at me when I wrote this morning. Somebody said, let's have Trump and national capitalism, and I said, well, the problem is the problem is with Trump, it's more like national liberalism, or could I say national socialism?
I had a discussion with a friend of mine who is a Baptist minister and has his master's in theology, and I've known him since high school. I've known him for 40-something years or whatever. And we were talking IM and on Facebook about candidates and stuff. And he asked me, about different things, question Trump, Cruz, whoever, And I said, well, here's my answer.
I said, Ted Cruz is the person who, in my mind, will bring me closer to returning to a federal republic with more state sovereignty and local control. That's all I care about. I'm looking for that guy, okay? I don't think any of those other guys are that guy. That's why I support him. There may be some other stuff that you may not love or hate or whatever about him, but given everything I've read and everything I know, he is more likely to get me to that, closer to that goal than anybody else running, and that's all I care about.
And you know what? When you look at the others and their flaws, they have got serious flaws. And by the way, I'd love to see Jim Gilmore as president as a backup. The man's got far more depth when you get to know him. But he was just so far behind in the polls. You can laugh.
He would bring us closer to that goal than anybody else besides Cruz.
I think he's pretty good, yeah, because he actually he understands economics, he understands world affairs, and he did a halfway decent job. Now, I didn't agree with him on everything, but the more you looked and listened, the more you realized that there was a serious and sensible guy there.
And he's a gentleman and a principled human being when you talk with him.
Absolutely. But you know what? Other than that, frankly, if you cannot devolve back to the constitutional republic, if you want somebody who will manage the federal giant efficiently and reduce costs, you may as well go for Jeb, because he can do that. You won't agree with him on anything else.
Well, and this is the thing that we need. I don't know. I mean, I failed to articulate it properly until maybe just now or last night. All these people, the Al Baldessaros, the Doug Lamberts, the people that we know who are supporting Trump, or whoever, who are, in theory, constitutional type people who think a federal republic is better, local control is better, the money and the power should be closer to the people. Who among these candidates is the person who is most likely to get you closer?
That's right.
Because that's what you want the president to do. We've had all the other kinds. We had George Bush, he made government bigger. We had Clinton, he made government bigger. We had Bush before him, he made the government bigger. We got Obama, he made it really bigger. You know, if you really are a constitutional conservative or libertarian, the candidate you want, Rand Paul would be a great example of that, but he's not in the race. He didn't resonate with people. Who gets you closer to what you want at your core principle? It's not Trump.
No way.
It's Ted Cruz.
And not just because of things he's done. We have no way of knowing what he's going to do next. We don't have any set guidelines.
None.
Not even over 6 months of what grounds him with relation to personal responsibility, property, and government. We don't. He's all over the place.
And by the way, there's a video out there. It goes back some while about Trump and his deals, and there's also a nice piece in Conservative HQ this morning about how it really went down in Atlantic City with the bankruptcy and the dilutions.
And I phrased it the way I did for a reason, because I used to be one of those, and I've said it before, one of those independent type people who didn't pay attention to politics. I voted for Democrats, I voted for Republicans, I voted for third party candidates. I didn't have a grounding. After 9/11, I went out and got one. I read, I did research, I found out what I believed and what made the most sense to me.
Yeah.
And ever since then, I've been, I think, pretty consistent. I think I have 8,000 posts out there that'll prove that my message is the same.
That we know what you believe.
That you know what I think and where it comes from. Right. And so I said that specifically because we don't know with him. I mean, he may have been a raging liberal in the 90s, and I could forgive that if since then he had shown me consistently that he had found some principles that were now guiding him politically.
Correct.
We don't have that.
You know, I had the chance... I'm not sure if that's the right phrase.
Opportunity.
But an interaction with government to which I had to talk about history.
You hit a tree.
My own history.
You were driving along, minding your own business, and a tree jumped out in front of your car with politics or government or something written on it.
And I had a chance to review because, I was asked, what is your background? What motivated you as you were growing up? What were the big things? And and I grew up in my church. I participated in all of the youth activities. Christian Service Brigade. I was in the youth choirs. I participated in the youth groups. I was president of the high school youth group. I was the same thing with the college-age guys and gals when I came back from from college at the time. Got involved with the new marrieds when we did that. I taught Sunday school to kids. I taught Sunday school to high schoolers. Debbie and I were the youth leaders at our churches. I was on the Christian Ed board. I was chair of the Christian Ed board, sang in the choirs, and then finally became a deacon, which is in a Protestant church is, one step below being a pastor. But I preached as well. So, to me, that was my life until we just couldn't go to church anymore for various and sundry reasons, having to do with health reasons. But I've noticed that politics, even though we always hear that politics and religion should never mix, they're essentially the same thing in different ways. On one side, you have the Bible, for me as an evangelical Christian. For us as conservatives, we have the Constitution. Again, from what I said earlier, these are rock-bottom absolute values. They are not to be trifled with. But in religion, you see the mainline Protestant denominations, like the Presbyterians, Episcopalians, all that, going to a social gospel. They're becoming secularized, where their foundational document, with the foundational documents are either of no consequence whatsoever. When the Presbyterians say, well, Jesus Christ isn't the only way to heaven, they've gone off the rails as far as that's concerned. We as conservatives understand the Constitution is the equivalent to what the Bible is in the religious world. And that's how we judge things, and that's where we want to go. But as we see, even people who call themselves conservatives, once they unhinge themselves from their foundational materials, you can believe in anything. And I think that's what's driving a lot of us. The radicals of the 60s, the real progressives, who use culture to change the culture. That was with the Frankfurt School. When they came from Germany, settled in California, found them to be too decadent and moved to Chicago. They set about to change the culture because they saw that the economic warfare, which couldn't work at that time, wasn't working. So you take the culture, like you brought up with Dewey way back in the early 1900s, you change the culture. You change Hollywood. You do this. Hollywood used to be very patriotic, World War II and previous. Now, not so much. It's changed. So they've taken those high ramparts. So my point is, once again, once you get away from those foundational materials that way back when we all, as Americans, took for granted, whether you were a churchgoer or not, whether you looked at that, but you go back to the 1790s through, say, the 1860s, that was a given. It wasn't even discussed.
Right.
Progressivism, that rot of a foreign philosophy, changed everything. As Bismarck, you talked about Germany being a tremendous country back in the 1800s. Well, it was von Bismarck rolling stuff up through the 1860s and 1880s, rolling up all of the German provinces. That's when they finally got their country.
And by the way, national health.
And, he was trying to beat the socialists to their own game, and he figured out, if I promise the populace these things, but get to use their money to give them back these things, I'll keep the real socialists at bay. So it's always been the lesser of two evils. But when that philosophy really became, Marxist and Leninism and rolled on through, to go back to your point, you've been wondering this whole time, how could we get like this? It's because we've left absolute values.
Absolutely.
And it's human nature.
And it's human nature. It's
entropy.
Yeah. And my little soliloquy here was brought up because you're talking to your pastor friend. And I've been thinking about this for a long time because I have kind of switched from one to the other because this I can do all the time, in addition to maintaining my roots, obviously, but in a less institutionalized way. I haven't left those foundational things.
All right, quick break. We're going to come back. Great discussion.
No,
you can keep going. No, that's fine. You fit it in nice. We'll be right back. Stay tuned.
From the CNHT studios in Concord, New Hampshire, just a few blocks from the New Hampshire State House, this is
Rock Talk.